You experience Spain, but when you know the language and when you can communicate in the language, it opens up a whole new dimension and understanding of, Spanish culture that you can't get from just speaking English.
Hi, my name is Nicole, and I'd like to welcome you to the Expat Life Show on the Travel to Money podcast. I'm super excited to be joined today by Johnny from Millennials with Money. And we are going to be talking about expat life in Spain because Johnny is an expat living in Spain and he's got a lot of great advice. So, hey, Johnny, so happy to have you here today.
Nicole, it's a pleasure to be here. Thank you so much for having me and congrats on launching your podcast. Great,
Thank
great way to
you.
start 2024.
Thank you so much. Well, let's jump into talking about Spain. I know we've talked some about this before, but I've got some questions that I think that my listeners are particularly interested in. What initially drew you to Spain as a place to live? You're from the UK, right? So how did that start for you?
So obviously coming from the UK, we don't have, the best weather year round and summer is a bit hit and miss as well. As a family, my family and I, like my parents and brother, we often used to go to my grandparents' apartment in the Canary Islands every summer for a family holiday, which was like the first time I got exposure to or, got to experience what things was like in Spain. And it always stuck with me like throughout my life, even when we didn't go back there because they sold the apartment and circumstances changed as we grew up. I always like stuck with the idea that, I had good memories and all that from Spain. And so going to live abroad for the first time in France, I realized, I had all these opportunities to travel and explore the world around me. And of course, I wanted to go back to Spain and try life in Spain. And so, just going over to Barcelona to visit in Madrid and then later going to visit the Canary Islands, the fascination came back with me, with the culture, with the people, of course, the great weather, as I've noted. And yeah, it just made me realize at one point, I should definitely give this a go and see what's available, if there's a way I can move to Spain and live there. Because of course, at the time as well, the UK was in the European Union. So
Right.
freedom of movement, the ability to move to another EU country was much easier than it is today for someone who's not from the EU.
Right. And just quickly, since you got that set up previous to that, are you able to kind of stay now as long as you want, or what does the future look like for you being in Spain?
So basically, yeah, the EU passed the resolution when they were negotiating the exit terms with the United Kingdom in Article 50 that British nationals living in an EU member state prior to the Brexit date were able to broadly maintain their same rights that they had before to healthcare,
Nice.
to work, etc. So myself, everybody else who was living in Spain before Brexit has that right. And then we simply had to, update residency cards or, even previous residency cards in Spain, like are valid to prove when you're in the country and that you have those rights. Legal experts have said it's better to update it and change for the new card because it has it explicitly stated that you're a beneficiary of that. In other EU countries, countries have taken a different approach. Like France made people, I think, reapply for residency cards all from the beginning, whereas in Spain, it was just more of an exchange process.
Right. Okay. Yeah, I know I was friends with some folks there in Spain that are from the UK during that transition, and they were having to now go get maybe a driver's license in Spain that they didn't have to have before, or some things like that. So there were some complexities, but that's great for those that were there that they're able to maintain that. That's really good.
Yeah.
So what do you think when you first moved to Spain, what were the biggest challenges you faced transitioning to life there?
So before I talk about some of the specific challenges, there's obviously, the general ones that maybe come for people like the language, like living in a new country where things are maybe done a bit differently. For me, having lived in France previously and then moving to Spain, if you move to another country, having lived already in another one, I think that culture shock is generally not as big, if there at all, when you move into like let's say a third or a second or a third country outside of your home country, because you kind of get that initial culture shock on the first time you move.
Right.
That said, of course, there are some specifics to Spain that I did notice when I came here. I think for me, the biggest one was mainly like the timing of general daily life in Spain. Like opening hours of stores, administration. For example, in the UK, like, you have pretty much banks are open maybe 9 to 5, or the pharmacy is open from maybe 9 till later in the day. And then here in Spain, like, it's very common for smaller shops, not talking about like the supermarkets or bigger stores here. Very common for them to have like a maybe 2 or 3 hour period in the middle of the day where they're closed and you can't go there. Right. And of course, Spanish administration, when you get in, you could pretty much only do, administrative procedures from, maybe 8:30 until about 2 a.m. again, because, a lot of the administrative centers aren't open in the afternoon as well.
Right.
So admin was another challenge coming to Spain. Like getting a NIE was probably the hardest part. Then the rest wasn't so bad. That said, like, I think in France, I definitely had a lot worse administrative experience than in Spain.
So getting that, the NIE, is that, or how did you call it? It's the NIE,
NIE,
is that
so
what
it's like the letters NIE, and it stands for like Número de Identificación Extranjero. It's like basically in Spain, if you're like a Spanish citizen, you have like a DNI, which is Documento Nacional de Identidad. So you have like basically a government number attributed to you, which says like this particular series, it's like numbers with a letter at the end, like identifies this person. So any foreigner who comes to Spain, like, they get an equivalent, but as a foreigner. And that number, it basically lets you, enter into contracts like rent, buy a car, like get a phone bill, etc.
Right. For those in the US, that would be like our social security number. I'm wondering, because my attorney did that for me, and so I didn't have to do anything, and it just felt so easy. Did you go through the process of doing it yourself?
I did do it myself, and I did it quite the hard way, because if you've got like a job offer, or if you're, an EU citizen getting residence and you're just applying for residency, you can pretty much get like the NIE number, I think, on the same day as you get your residency card. And it's so much easier, like if you have a job like available, or if you have, like a lot, like some savings in the bank. You don't, as an EU citizen, you don't need that much as well. Like not as much as, someone from a non-EU country would need. But at that time, I was maybe 22, 23 years old, looking for a job, only had a few grand in the bank. So it was a bit more complicated. But fortunately, the lady on the day was very nice, and she said, you've got a job interview, it's nothing concrete, but I'm going to give you the benefit of the doubt, and I'm going to process your NIE number. So I got my number on that day, and then actually it made it much easier when I was seeking a job after, to say, look, I've got this all set up already.
Right. That makes sense. I know a lot of people that I talk to are looking to buy homes in Spain, and of course you have to get that number, but I always say use the attorney, because then you don't have to do anything and they'll do it all for you. But I don't really know how difficult or easy the process is if someone tries to do it on their own.
Yeah. I mean, I did it on my own because I was young, didn't have money, and I had the time to like study about how to do it.
Yeah.
Someone who's maybe not familiar with Spanish language, or, they don't necessarily have all the time in the world to sit through and learn about it. Then, some like getting professional help, like there's definitely some value in it as well. And you can avoid mistakes that way as well. Something I've definitely come to appreciate, like as I've transitioned into the professional phase of my life. Right,
for sure. Well, what do you think has surprised you the most about Spanish culture since moving there?
Maybe I think Spanish culture is definitely generally more laid back than in the UK or in France, where I've lived as well, for example. People are rushing around a lot in the UK. It's like from one thing to the next. Whereas, in Spain, you kind of, in Madrid and Barcelona, you've obviously still got a bit of that culture as well. But it's nowhere near to the same extent as in a city like London or like Paris. So definitely the lifestyle being more laid back. It's definitely much more of like a family oriented culture as well. Like, in the US and the UK, you've got to some extent like a, let's call it hustle culture, where it's like, let's grind, let's make money, let's be successful. Whereas in Spain, it's not, you get hardworking people, and they are out there. I'm not to say that it doesn't exist, but definitely the emphasis on like spending time with family and like being sociable with like friends and like meal times outside as well. It's very important, and kind of, you know, family and friends and social time is it's a very important pillar of Spanish culture, I've come to learn.
I get that. I've noticed that a lot myself in visiting there. It's one of the things I love about Spain, but I'm always like, you have to be prepared for the trade-off, because if you want to enjoy the quality of life, you have to be willing to make some of the sacrifices when it comes to maybe not getting things done as quickly as you'd be used to, that sort of thing. People being on time for anything. I'm naturally a little bit late for everything, so I enjoy that, but it's not for everyone though. Folks with a type A personality, I feel like maybe struggle a little bit more adjusting to that part of it. Do you find that you're mostly building relationships with other expats when you're there? Do you have a lot of Spaniard friends? How does that look for you?
Yeah, in my case, the friends and the relationships that I've built while I've been here are a reflection of kind of the activities and things I do in everyday life. So, for example, I work in a multinational company. So a lot of my work from day to day is in English, but when I go to the office, I'm surrounded by Spanish-speaking colleagues. So I have a lot of, you know, Spanish colleagues who I've built relationships with, who I'm friends with, who I speak in Spanish with. Outside of work, I played a lot of basketball because that's one of my interests. Cool. So again, through basketball, I've met a lot of Spanish people, Latinos as well. I've met through basketball as well. To be honest, the international friends that I've made here, the majority of them were people that I already knew who were living here. Then as time has gone on, a lot of them have actually, you know, moved back to their home countries or moved on. So in my particular situation, like I would say the majority of my friends are Spanish or Latino. Yeah.
Oh, that's so cool. And I think that's one of the reasons I want to always encourage people toward language learning. Is because my group in Spain right now is mostly other expats, because I can't communicate fluently in Spanish, but I so look forward to being able to speak Spanish so that I can make friends with more of the locals. And I had a feeling, since you're fluent in Spanish, that a lot of your friends would probably end up being Spaniards, which is so awesome. And I just thought that it'd be great to encourage people toward the importance of really, and being able to communicate comfortably in the language, because it'll really help you with building relationships, I'd guess.
Yeah, 100%. Like learning the language, like for example, you experience Spain, but when you know the language and when you can communicate in the language, it opens up a whole new dimension and understanding of, Spanish culture that you can't get from just speaking English. And it also, like as you said, like it opens up like the number of people who you can communicate with, who you can make friends with, who can, be really helpful in, if you've got an administrative problem, or if you don't understand how something works in Spain, like you can ask them like, oh, like how does this work? Like, trying to think if I've got an example. Like I've asked, because I did like renovation work in my apartment, and, I have no idea like how to go about that. So I simply asked like the president of the community of property owners. I was like, okay, what do I need to do here? And he explained like in Spanish, yeah, you need to go to the town hall and ask for this permit, and you need to do this, and etc. So like just makes it much easier, getting information as well, and getting help when you need it.
Totally. That makes a lot of sense. Well, Johnny, what advice would you give to someone considering making the move to Spain as an expat?
Definitely do it. If you have the chance to move anywhere in the world or explore a new place, 100% like go for it. You won't regret it, for sure. I always say like, the regret, you do something and it doesn't work out, like the regret will be so much less than like if you like don't do something and you end up wondering. That's one thing. As we just talked about, like having some understanding of the language, being able to communicate, like it will make your life so much easier, and it will make building relationships and getting help a lot easier as well. Even if you can't like communicate fully, like showing the effort that you're really trying, like people in the country will be much more willing to make an extra step and try and help you like where you fall short. And in a country like Spain, I'd say like visit the entire country because it has literally everything. You got big cities like Madrid and Barcelona. You got beaches, beautiful beaches all around the south, in the north as well. You got mountains. You got the Canary Islands, which is fantastic as well. So just it's such a diverse country that really like try and explore everything.
Yeah, that's great advice. Are you planning to go anywhere new in Spain in the next year that you haven't been?
Mm, so I've been to a lot of mainland Spain. I'd like to maybe visit some of the other Canary Islands.
Mm,
And I also want to visit Ceuta and Melilla. So people who
okay.
don't know, Ceuta and Melilla are basically like Spanish autonomous cities that
Okay.
are on the African continent.
Oh,
And
right.
it's the
Wow.
only place like where the EU has a border with an African country, which is Morocco.
Wow. I didn't know this. I've never heard of this before.
Yeah,
That's
so
really
you can fly
fascinating.
like from Madrid. You can fly to Melilla on like a
Okay.
little propeller plane, and I think Ceuta you might only be able to access it by helipad. So you might have to get a helicopter to get to
That'd be fun.
Ceuta. There's also like ferry from the south of Spain as well, which will cross over.
Cool. Well, thank you so much for being here today. Can you tell folks where they can find you and what kind of information you've got out there about Spain?
Absolutely, yeah. So you can find me on YouTube, Millennials with Money. I'm uploading content on a weekly basis typically. I've also got my website, millennialswithmoney.com, which is all together. And you can find me on Instagram at millennials with money with an underscore at the end. These are the three main places where I'm active. So I talk
Cool.
a lot about Spain at least once a month. I put out content on Spain since I'm living here, and a lot of my following, is interested in finding out about Spain. But I also talk more generally about life as an expat, about being a digital nomad, entrepreneurship, investing, saving, and finance as well.
That's fantastic. So definitely go follow Johnny, subscribe to his YouTube channel, check out all the content he has. And for those of you listening, thank you so much for being here. Be sure to let me know if you've got any topics you'd like for us to cover. Ask any questions in the comments. Would love to be a resource for you. So thanks so much for being here. As always, I can't wait to see where your dreams will take you.